Hey, y'all. Welcome to another Divided States of America show. I'm your host, Marlon Gardinera. Today, I'm waving the white flag. Here it is. It's not a white flag. It's a dinner napkin slash handkerchief. I'm waving the white flag to COVID today. It still has me in the throes of yeah, bad cold symptoms and a headache that's been running for 3 days straight. Clearly, I picked the worst week to start, but I'm pretty tenacious. I've got a couple volunteer gigs. I think I'm going on 13 years on one and 12 on another. I'm pretty persistent as well. So I don't know that I'm going to stop. I just know that I can't do exactly what I plan to do and talk as long as I wanted to and bring on the guests that I want to, because I think I'd spend most of the time sneezing, coughing, blowing my nose, and drinking water to clear my throat. So another abbreviated version, but there are obviously some things on my mind. I want to talk about them. I want to get it out there. I'm going to ask some questions that when we do get an opportunity to do the full show, and let's hope I'm in better shape, and we'll call it a relaunch on Monday. And maybe by then I'll even have worked out some of the kinks. Again, when you're producing, directing, hosting a show, things are bound to go wrong. Yesterday I didn't bring my mic to my face before I started. The volume was down on the video. So today is going to give me another opportunity to get better, and this to be another one of those videos that we can look back at a year from now and say, do you remember what it used to be like? But before we do all that, let's get the show started. Today, talking briefly, July 4th, the Highland Park shooting. Jayland Walker in Akron, Ohio, the young man that was shot dozens of times by officers. Brittney Griner, and not for the sake of just Brittney Griner or the fact that she's a celebrity or the WNBA. I'm no more moved by a celebrity than I am an everyday person who has to endure the challenges in life. But I got to tell you, the vitriol is it's just uh, picture perfect for a show called The Divided States of America. And we'll get into that. And yesterday, I forgot probably what I hope to be one of the most important parts of every program, a joy story. So today, if I can remember this time, we'll get to it. But let's get today's show started.
Welcome to the Divided States of America show, where your host, Marlon Gardinera, takes on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. We'll sort through the best and worst of politics and culture, asking questions and looking for answers that our two-ring, two-party circus has failed to provide.
Thank you for coming back. I see there are a few of you out there. The hope is that we'll grow slow, we'll get it right, and eventually lots of people will even see these episodes and get an idea of what it looked like when we started, the types of subjects we're trying to cover, and the approach we're taking on each of the subjects. I am not a journalist. I'm not a reporter. I don't have a crack staff of people on the scene asking tough questions to the people who have the answers. What I am is an American, motivated by things that are important to me. But one of the motivations is I don't know that we could be any more divided. I don't know that it could be, even the most common issues could be any more divisive. And it's destructive, quite frankly. I think we're going to do more harm to ourselves than others could do to us on the road we're going. And I, at least, if nothing else, want to have those discussions. And from time to time, there are going to be issues where I'm going to dig in. And we won't stop until we know we've made progress and we've brought enough people along to make a difference. And in each one of those efforts, obviously, the goal won't be to divide, but to unite, to bond us around common things. And there are plenty of them. Although if you listen to podcasts and radio shows and the news media, it almost seems as if making a few bucks or getting a few more people in your party is far, far a greater goal than making progress on real issues that should matter to a lot of people. So we're going to take a different approach here, and we'll do that even with the subjects that I want to talk about. And I'm going to start with the horrific Highland shooting on July 4th. 7 people lost their lives, people aging in the age range of 35 to 88. I think many of you are probably familiar with these folks, Kevin and Irina McCarthy. They were victims in that shooting. And unfortunately, you don't see them without seeing this young man, their son, a 2-year-old who will now be living with their grandparents. And he'll be living with their grandparents because, again, his parents are gone. I was at a 4th of July parade. I've already talked about how joyful or how proud I am to celebrate on July 4th, not only the family and friends, but just the community spirit, the red, white, and blue. I don't know, bunting. You see it to me in two places. You see it on July 4th and you see it on opening day of Major League Baseball. I love baseball. It just represents so many positive things. But this picture of this young man you're looking at right now is not an example of positive. It's an example of a young man who lost two parents. There's a lot to the story. You know the shooter. He's already been arrested. He's already confessed to the crimes. It looks like he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should. You're starting to hear the other layers of the story. His father signed for him to get guns that he wouldn't be able to get on his own in his state until he was 21. His father signed for him. There are people calling for his father's arrest and culpability in this whole scenario because apparently this young man has had encounters with the law. Members of his own family have said he had threatened them or threatened to kill everyone. Excuse me. Already starting. That's why it's going to be another short one. But we know that's already happening, and we know those layers already exist. But my approach or my questions or my concerns when you look at these situations happening over and over and over again is there a certain number of people that have to experience this firsthand before we start having real conversations about mass shootings. I don't mean the simplistic, you're for guns, you're on to get four guns. You believe in the Second Amendment, you don't believe in the Second Amendment, because quite frankly, I don't know that this issue is that simple. If it were, and it were just a vote of the people, I think we'd have more restrictions on guns. I don't think a majority of Americans want anyone to be able to go purchase an AR-15 or other weapons that can carry high-capacity magazines and kill a significant number of people in such a short period of time. I just don't think the numbers are there. But we work in a two-party system where one side supports it or thinks that their supporters want it. The other side thinks that their supporters want the right to own guns, but they want more restrictions on it. And I always thought the Second Amendment included well-regulated as one of the words in it, although it was militia and it was written by people in a different time who had no way of knowing where we would be today. The balance to that is it's a document that can change. We could amend the Constitution, but we're so divided. I don't know that we could amend the Constitution on something we all agreed on. I really don't. I think the division and the layers for and against, us versus them, are so thick that even if we actually agreed on something, I don't know that we could get enough done. And that's pretty sad. But there is a mechanism through our Constitution to get that done. But I'm just wondering, is there a number of people that have to be personally affected before the conversations get real about it, instead of just being political? Because I'll be honest with you, when I make decisions with my wife in my home, they're not really political. They're real. And if I remember correctly, we do actually put politicians in place. Now, if we go the lazy route and we just assume that the people on this side are more like us and will give us what I want, and we just have to respect that there's going to be some things in there that we don't necessarily agree with, but that's where the power is, so we stick with that. Hey, folks, I think we're going to be on this road for a long time, which then begs the question, how long exactly will our gun culture be the way it is? I'm looking for gun advocates, and by gun advocates, I mean people who support the Second Amendment and believe it's their right to carry whatever they want to carry. We already have the understanding that we don't have the ability to go to a store and buy grenades. Where should the line be drawn on what weapons we can bear, what arms we can bear? Is our gun culture going to change? It's a very simple question, but one that when I'm feeling better and can talk more, we're going to bring some guests on and we're going to get to the bottom of that. But between now and then, think about it. What will it take? Is it possible for the citizens of America to stand up and make a change? Or, quite frankly, are there just not enough people who want it? So we're just going to leave the status quo and wait for it to be your parade or your child's school or your workplace. I definitely believe we're a country that it's just a sad reality. If it's not happening to me, it's not happening, I think is what is most people's attitude. If it doesn't happen to me, it's not a real thing. It's not important. It's not big enough. I'm guessing, and this is just a guess, this young lady feels a little bit different. Her mother was killed in Highland Park on July 4th.
And I saw the shooter shooting down the kids, and I told her that it was a shooter and that she had to run. So I started running with her, and we were next to each other, and he shot her in the chest, and she fell down, and I knew she was dead. So I
What's the memory that you want to share with us about your mom?
I want to share how she was before she died. She was waving to the floats. Every float that went by, she waved to them. It was just a
Is that a conversation you want your children to have with a member of the media? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get where we're going. I don't know where the consensus is. I don't know who's even fighting for us. What I do know is that I don't rely on politicians to do that. I am of the belief that their self interest, in most cases, outweighs principle. I'm of the belief that their desire to be in power and their need for party is more important than the people, in many cases, they represent. I'm happy to take on anybody, and I don't mean take on as if it has to be adversarial. I'm happy to have a real conversation with any politician who says they understand that there may be a time where their principle goes against the power or the party structure, and it's going to cost them their job. I'm looking for the politician that says, my job is not more important than the people I'm supposed to represent. I, as an individual, am not more important than the people I'm supposed to represent. And oftentimes we hear this very common, blah, 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 I think, my personal opinion, where politicians say they have to endure what they have to endure. They have to do what they got to do to get in a position of power to make the change that they know people want. Then I guess I'm just looking for the politician that stands out and makes that change. I'm looking for the politician that can go against their party when they know their party is going too far in one direction or another, or even if they don't believe they're going too far, if they know that they, as a politician in their region, are not representing the people of their region. They're only representing the people who keep them in power. I always want to ask politicians that. Do you have any concern for the people that don't vote for you? Are they significant in what you're trying to do? All these questions to me are the point of the show. All these questions are the things that I'm actually looking for answers for and real conversations. It's going to be hard to find those people. It's going to be hard to have those conversations. But those are the ones I want to have. Not the superficial, hey, this happened, that happened. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Give me your knee-jerk reaction. I don't want the knee-jerk reaction. I want a little depth. I want to be able to understand what's going on. And I want to be able to understand why that young lady is explaining that she had to run away from her mother's body because she knew she was dead. I want to know why she had to answer the question. What's your memory of your mother? Her memory was her mother waving at every float that went by. Were you at a parade? Did you wave? Can you imagine that being your last day because enough Americans didn't do anything? Enough politicians did nothing to make us safer. I told you I was in Vegas last week. The streets in Las Vegas where a car could run into a crowd are now blocked by pillars. If we know cars can do, or cars are damaged, or cars have defects, we recall them. I don't quite know why we haven't dealt with the drunk driving issue a little bit better. We could keep cars from working if a person were drunk. There are steps we could take to make people safer in almost all arenas. I think that's just an odds thing. But do the odds have to change and enough people have to be shot randomly at a 4th of July parade, or like I said, at your workplace, or at your children's school, for us to take this issue a little more serious and make progress, not just keep talking? I want to have those real conversations, and maybe we'll find the right groups or the right people to join to make a difference. I'm not for a gun ban. You come in my house unannounced, you're probably not going to make it out on your own. I believe in protecting your family. But I also believe that there are limits to what we should have access to do harm to one another, because there are clearly enough people out there prepared to do it. Just my 2 cents on that. I feel bad for that young lady. Give us a minute. We'll move on to the next feel bad scenario in America. It's sad that we even pause for the stories that we have to hear on a day-to-day basis. There are societies who don't deal with that, not the same way, not every day, or as I've heard 300 times in 2022, there have been shootings of 4 or more people. deaths in those shootings of 4 or more people. We'll dig in soon enough. Next up, unfortunately, is the story of the 25-year-old in Akron, Ohio, Jayland Walker. He was shot dozens and dozens of times. He was fleeing from a traffic stop. I've heard tidbits of there was a gun in the car. You've seen one of the videos. One of the videos proclaims, and I don't question, sorry, again, got to get through the learning curve of making it all happen at the same time. Nonetheless, we've heard some of the tidbits. We've seen one of the videos, just one. I'm going to start by saying we don't have all the information. I'm going to start by not jumping to conclusions about any aspect of this particular case. But there are observations that I think we can make. What we know we have now that we didn't have before are body cams. There has been one that we've seen over and over again of Jayland Walker fleeing the car that was pulled over, guns drawn, him running away, and then we hear a litany of shots. I hate showing this, but there are people who haven't seen it, and it also just adds to the reality behind the story. And I don't want to create a false reality. I don't want you or anybody else to think that this isn't real. So I'm going to take a look at that particular vantage point. The video is graphic. Watch at your own discretion. You would think you would think that at some point we'd become desensitized to the number of times this has happened, the number of tragedies that people have to endure. It's awful. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing how often these things are happening. Sometimes I'm at a loss of words. I don't necessarily know what to say to account for the reality that these things are happening. I can say this: we have body cams. One has been released. A couple have actually been released. I'm curious to see what they all show. We've heard an officer say that there was a gunshot. I'm sure, or I'm assuming, some of the body cameras picked up the fact that there may have been a gunshot. How do we determine where the gunshot came from? Was it the victim, or excuse me, was it Jayland Walker? Was it a shot from another officer? I know what we've also had for a long time in America is, for some people, mistrust. So if we didn't have the body cams and we just had to take the report of what people at the incident said, I can tell you there would have been so much mistrust that the protest would have raged on for a long time. Because at the end of the day, I believe there were 60 shots, and the young man was not armed when they got to the body, handcuffed it. He was still handcuffed when the medical examiner got there. He wasn't armed. That doesn't say that that there may not have been a shot before. It doesn't say that the police officers didn't feel threatened. And I am not qualified to tell you what the threat or the fear or the concern of my own life would be if I were in a situation where there was a potential that a shot had already been fired, or the fact that I believe a gun was found in the car. I can't speak to those things. I can't speak to the mistrust. I'm not going to presume anyone guilty or innocent, but I can tell you, if you look online, the number of people with such strong opinions on what has happened requires a level of presumption, and it just requires assumptions that are unbelievable. I can't tell you, the divide in America is so real. It amazes me, the vitriol that's out there. And this is going to apply to the story after this as well. It's amazing how strong the opinions are. But you add the distrust. You add, for instance, I don't know that all the body cams were released, so it's not as if we're in a position, the court of public opinion, to decide, hey, what happened? Do we agree? Do we agree that what they say happened is exactly how it went down? We're not in a position to do that. But the young man's still going to be gone. And we hopefully will hear explanations of the officers who did feel, you would imagine, before that many rounds could be fired, that their lives were in danger. It'll be curious to see. But I have questions. One side says comply. If you don't violate the law, the traffic violation, you wouldn't be in that situation. That's really how simple some people's approach to this is. I know they did it with George Floyd. He committed a crime. I've said the same thing several times that we've been in these situations. First is the punishment for those particular crimes death? Is that the punishment? Is that the prescribed punishment? And for the people that say if you comply with the law, you won't be shot, would that apply to their own children? Would their opinion about this situation, would their attitude about this situation change ever so slightly when or if they realized it was their child who didn't comply with a traffic law and then didn't comply when an officer told them to stop? Would they then think justice has more depth than just comply? And then I'll tell you something that is personal, but it's as honest as probably can be. In part, because I do believe in the Second Amendment, I don't have a lot of fear. There are horrible things that happen in the world, and I certainly don't want any of those horrible things to happen to me. I certainly am as prepared as I can personally be to make sure they don't happen to my children and my family and my home. People do what they have to do to secure their own lives and their own families, and I'm no exception to that. But if I had to speak to one fear, and this, for some people this is going to sound crazy. I'm a decent-sized guy, little training to protect myself, some preparation. I mean, you can always be caught off guard. Crazy things happen. I only fear one, I guess you could say, type of person. I personally fear a cop having a bad day. I personally fear, I don't want to say for my life, but the question is there. And I want everybody to understand, I am nothing but respectful to law enforcement. And I mean nothing but respectful. They have a job to do. If I violate the law, that job is to address me. I'm so sorry. COVID's winning. I'm always respectful of law enforcement. I would be respectful of law enforcement if I thought the law enforcement was doing something wrong. And that has happened. A law enforcement officer has been held accountable for his actions towards me, but he didn't get disrespect from me. He didn't get questioned. He didn't get ridiculed. He didn't get the words that were running through my head, because I didn't think the time and place to deal with any issue with law enforcement is standing in the street. Let them do their job, and in America, the justice system should work in a fashion that's going to allow me to have my day in court and my opportunity for myself to be heard. I can speak. I can put sentences together. I can explain what has happened, and the person can determine whether or not they think what I've said is honest and deliberate and intentional. That's for others to decide. But that battle wasn't going to be had in the street with an officer. And again, I've had a disagreement. One incident. It worked out in my favor in that how I was treated and how the situation was handled was wrong, and the officer was held to account. And I'm okay with that. That's, to me, how it should have been handled. I was okay with that. But this young man doesn't have that opportunity. Why? What are the details? What do we have to do to get to a place where unarmed people don't get shot? What did he do to create a level of fear that was the outcome? You saw in the video that they said that it was called a homicide. Huh. Okay. I'm curious to see how that goes and what that looks like in the long run. But I guess we'll see more about that then. All right. I guess the only other side of that you can't go without mentioning, you could go with comply, and that won't happen, or you could also hear the voices of people saying another unarmed black man being shot. And is it the fear or the bias or the concern that people have, maybe having dealt with enough criminals that in their cases have been black, that leads someone to away from the de-escalation path and creates greater fear and a greater, in their eyes, need to protect their own lives? I don't expect or want any officer not to make it home, ever. I don't even care what they did. I want them to go home too. If they committed a crime, the punishment for that crime in the street is not death. I know we lost an officer in Detroit. That's not the outcome anybody's looking for. So as we talk about a divided states of America, the outcome isn't a dead unarmed person or a dead cop. Where is the middle? Who's working towards it? Is it just a fight from one side to the other? Or are there a group of people that their primary concern is where we get in the middle of that? Politicians, boy, I know I saw the Black Lives Matter, then I saw All Lives Matter, then I saw Blue Lives Matter. When do we get to a country where Black Lives Matter? And that was just the end of it. And we all stand up for black people and want things to be better. The need for all lives mattering, okay, there's no question. I agree with that. They weren't speaking, fighting, standing up, kneeling down against all lives. They were talking about a specific incident. Don't know if this one will be connected to that. But I do know that all Americans weren't willing to get behind that, as if that idea was bad. So bad that they needed to create a new slogan to counter it. Because All Lives Matter was a new slogan to counter Black Lives Matter. Blue Lives Matter was a slogan to counter people chanting Black Lives Matter. And it's one of those situations where blue lives do matter. I didn't know we were choosing between the two. I didn't know that the natural response to Black Lives Matter would be blue. They both can coexist. And if blue lives are at more risk, they are, we know that by virtue of their job, but if there's something specific happening that isn't being addressed, then we should be going after that as well, because that was the intention of Black Lives Matter, not the group, not the official group. I don't even know who they are. I don't know who runs it. No, I've not donated money. I don't know people who've donated money. I know a lot of the money they've received has been inadvertent people thinking that they were supporting a movement when it ended up being a group that actually took on the name. People come up with any excuse. But there are two sides to this, and one is right now still at comply, and this doesn't happen, and the other side is another black man has been killed. What's in the middle? That's the voice or the part that I'm looking for. I'm going to be brief on that till we know more, till we hear more. Give me a second. We'll get ready for the next one. All right. Until I get a director and producer in here and people switching and changing things, I have to do everything myself. I can only go so fast. I can only get so good. And these, unfortunately, have been practice runs. And I appreciate any of you willing to listen to the practice runs. Again, it'll be interesting to come back and see what the show is like a year from now, because I certainly plan on continuing. My voice will get better. My health will be better. There'll be guests and there'll be people talking about these issues, which is the intention of the show. But this next one. This isn't about Brittney Griner and her being an WNBA star. It's not about the pay inequity as it's being sold between the NBA and the WNBA. I'm all for women receiving equal dollar for equal work every time, without question, without fail. I don't care about the excuses. They're just nonsense. The fact that men have been in control is the reason it hasn't been fixed. And I think if there were more women in position of power, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So there should be. I look forward to that not being a topic of discussion. Certainly as it relates to pay, the NBA, the revenue there versus the revenue in the WNBA certainly creates a scenario where you can't pay money that it doesn't exist, but that's a discussion for a different day. We know Brittney Griner because she was jailed in Russia. She brought cannabis oil into the country, I believe, in vape cartridges. She had been back and forth to the country several times because she plays professional basketball there. Apparently she gets paid better there than she does here. So I certainly appreciate anybody going after opportunity wherever the opportunity is. So she did. She broke the law. I empathize for anybody that's in a bad situation. I still empathize for people when they put themselves in a bad situation, because many of the bad situations people are in, they put themselves there. She said it was inadvertent. She packed her bag, didn't realize she put it in or didn't mean to put it in. It doesn't matter if I believe her or not. She's not in America, and I'm not on a jury of her peers. I'm not a part of a jury of her peers where I get to look her in her eye and listen to testimony and understand exactly what exactly what happened. It's Russia. Different rules. And one of the things you need to factor into the rules they're working with is America supplying weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine is killing Russian soldiers. Russia doesn't work the way we do. They're not a democracy. Things can change. They have a leader that has enough influence to impact this case in the blink of an eye. Don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. Don't have direct evidence, but I don't doubt it. Now, again, I'm not here to report the news. I'm not here to regurgitate the news. I'm not a journalist. But I will say, again, the divided states of America is clear. Us versus them is clear. I'm curious where the line is drawn. There is a lot of hate towards celebrities. It blows my mind. They're just regular people that have a talent or a skill that people are willing to pay money to see. That's it. That's the defining characteristic outside of you and me. That's it. People are willing to pay to see them do their job. Now, most of us have jobs that people wouldn't pay a nickel to come watch us do it. Not a penny. And the people we work for, the people who make money from what we do, aren't really willing to pay us enough either. But for some people, what they do is entertaining, or what they do is motivating or inspiring. I call it what you want. People are willing to pay celebrities to do what it is they do. Now, it doesn't make them more qualified to have better political opinions, but it also doesn't eliminate their political opinions because they're tax-paying U.S. citizens just like us. They're just regular people that have an exciting job by virtue of how much people are willing to pay to see them do that job. That's it. But we discount celebrities as if they aren't real people, as if they don't raise families and they don't have kids and they don't donate and they don't volunteer and they don't do all the other things that we do. Why Americans like to group people, separate people, and have an us and a them, it just amazes me. We pay the money to see them, and then we hate on them. And for those people who don't want to see them, it's as if it's a crime because others do. It's absurd. It's silly. But I got to tell you, the vitriol on social media related to this case is probably one of the best examples of why a show like this wants to be around. I'm going to show you some of the things they're saying. As a matter of fact, this came from an ESPN post, and I know you can't see it so well. I want to blow it up, but I want you to get the full breadth of some of the things that are on there, because it blows my mind. It blows my mind. First one up. This came from Naomi Faith, because there's a lot of controversy surrounding Brittney in that she kneeled and also said that she didn't think the national anthem had its place in the WNBA. Just think Colin Kaepernick. And I know people have very strong opinions about that. Not the focus of today. Another day, because that topic doesn't go away, and people's strong feelings about it haven't gone away either. So again, we'll get to that some other time. But she did something similar. So people have such strong opinions. And that leads me to a couple of basic questions. And who's leading the way to make life in America better? Because our politicians tend to go by way of the people that they think are going to vote for them and keep them in power. But again, let's take a look at some of the things that we're seeing. Naomi Faith, this notion that she's anti-American because she kneeled for the anthem is absurd. She goes on to say kneeling is a sign of reverence, not disrespect. You kneel at church, and veterans have said this over and over again. People having a problem with her need to stop talking about her, and it goes on. Next person says she would have been home a long time ago if Trump was president. Next person says people taking their frustrations out on her. You love to see others suffer. And I actually agree with this. This is Jamichael Knight. People taking their frustrations out on her. You love to see others suffer. Exactly how much do you want somebody who took cannabis oil in a vape cartridge to suffer? Don't get me wrong. She did it. You can't do that. You put yourself at risk when you do. You may have to serve your time. I know they're talking about a prisoner exchange and a prisoner swap. Paul Whelan, who was convicted in 2018 and sentenced to 16 years in jail for espionage, is still suffering. He received attention. Some are questioning whether she's getting more than him. I know it's just topical. I know this is happening in the middle of the war between Ukraine and Russia, and we're supplying Ukraine, and Russia's losing soldiers to what's happening. So, I understand how it's new or news as a result of all of that. But people want him home. But there's rumors about a prisoner swap and her coming home as a result of that. But it's real. Look at the next one, Winston Grimes. Look at so-called Americans happy about a fellow American being detained in another country, all because she disagrees with their fake patriotism. And then we display the other side. This was from Craig Denny, talking about Brittney Griner. The same person that said the national anthem has no place in the WNBA is now begging for help from the United States. Isn't it ironic? I had to put my 2 cents in there. I wrote a comment. It was something that I thought was important, so I put it in. There it is. And this is my question for all of you. Do you have to love do you have to love every aspect of America to be afforded the rights and support of Americans? Think of it this way. People show endless disrespect to our leaders. They show endless disrespect to things that they don't like. Is there an argument to be made that they are anti-American because another American wants something and they hate on that person? I certainly stand for the national anthem. That's not a question. It represents something for me that makes it important enough for me to stand. But in America, where you have the freedom to do what you choose if you choose not to because something else is compelling you, does that make you anti-American enough to not be afforded the rights of Americans? This doesn't get her out of what she did. Again, she did it. She pleaded guilty today to doing it. They're talking about 10 years. They're talking about a lot of things. But why is it that Americans judge others so harshly, so quickly, without question? It's one of the primary points of the show. One of the things we'll explore as we move forward, one of the questions we'll be able to ask to real people. I want to talk to the people in these Facebook posts. I want to know what they think. I want to know if they would think the same if it were a member of their family. I want to know if they thought the same if it were somebody they agreed with. I want to know how and why we could be so divided so quickly, and how do they choose sides? Is it because she's a celebrity? Is it because she committed a crime? Is it because she's a female? Is it because she's lesbian? I don't have the answers to all of the questions, but I want to talk to people who do. But I have to do it when I feel better. I apologize for these abbreviated episodes. I apologize for not being able to dig in as I want to with all of these things. I underestimate each day how long I'll be able to talk and how many times I'll have to stop, to cough, to sneeze. And I get on the show and I feel clearly much better than I did right before the show, because right before the show I keep telling myself I have to do another short one. I won't be able to make it through, and people should only have to endure me showing the signs of COVID so many times in one episode. But I keep feeling better when I get going. I do want to end with this, a joy story. And when we really get going, I'm going to want to hear your joy stories. We'll make it possible for you to go to the site, leave recordings, leave videos, write. Let us know where you find joy any way you can in a time and a place that would otherwise be divided and difficult to have those experiences. I'm going to say this. I'm going to merge two into one because I typically want to do a joy story every day, but I didn't do one yesterday. Yesterday, when I talked about the fact that 1 million people died in America, it saddened me. It saddened me to remember that there were so many people who disregarded COVID. There were so many people who said it was just older folks or people who had other conditions, as if there's any excuse for people's lives to end prematurely. I put it up against the number of people who are dying for other reasons. Automobile accidents, 40,000. Gunshot deaths, 45,000. Suicides, 40,000 plus. Drug overdoses, 90,000 plus. And I only gave you those numbers not to belittle or make one more important or less important than the other, but to show you that relevant to other subjects that we spend a lot of time and attention to, there were a lot of people who put COVID to the side as if it really just didn't matter. And they took that me the people approach because they weren't impacted or they had it and it didn't seem severe. And they knew their kids for the most part would be safe, but there are kids who are suffering. There are kids who have died. This topic obviously came up because I think am on day 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know exactly when it started, of COVID. And because I'm immunosuppressed, I'm receiving treatment every day. I've got another appointment this afternoon. I'm on a medication to help keep it from spreading throughout my body, because oftentimes people in my condition, things don't end well. Do I have any fear about that? I don't know how to answer that. My heart has stopped before. I've checked out and been brought back. I was given a somewhat terminal diagnosis back in 2007, but I'm still here. Do I think life has to end at some point and something's going to do it? Yes. Is my primary concern COVID? I think we've moved on far enough that they certainly have more tools today than they had in the past, but people are still dying every day. So yes, there's some fear, but I live a confident life. I move forward. I use every day in the best way I possibly can. I've got my own issues. I got my own debt. I got my own everything. I got everything everybody else in America has. I do. I have things I need to get better at. But what I do appreciate and have to question, as much as we all have questions about different segments of our government, we just talked about questioning police officers and how they balance the fear of death versus overreacting, or the bias that they may have about someone. Or in this case, it could be completely, totally rational fear and something that needed to be done. Although you wonder how an unarmed person does get shot 60 times, but hopefully all of those details will flesh out and the trust factor will help be rebuilt so that we get enough information and we feel like we have a better understanding. I know not everybody will understand, but that the consensus, most of us do. Certainly trust issues when we have to send in our taxes or we see the missing part of our check and we wonder, what are they doing? What happened? There's a million reasons. But then there are times where the balance makes a difference. Do you think we would have the vaccine without any government funding right now? And whether you believe the government funded the development of the vaccine or quite frankly just paid to get it out to as many people as it did. Now, government is not an end-all, be-all solution. They are unaccountable. It's too big. I'll bet the process of getting this funded, getting it developed, getting it distributed had so many ridiculous things happen in it that it would be great examples of how government can be ineffective. But there's a level of effectiveness that helps alleviate some of the fear that some of you might have for me or some of you think I should have for myself. There are times when our government steps up because, quite frankly, I don't know if people would. Pharmaceuticals are certainly very good at using the money to develop life-saving, life-changing therapies. They do their job, and they get paid well to do it. And there are a number of them who have to raise a lot of money and it doesn't work out. And people lose money. It's just part of capitalism, I get that. But our government did play a role in securing and distributing a lot. Despite the fact that there are people who don't want it, despite the fact there are people who don't care, despite the fact there are people who didn't care, didn't want to wear a mask, didn't want to get vaccinated, and probably got other people sick. And even another reality in America that I think people shirk. There are people who had COVID, didn't care, didn't wear a mask. They got others sick. And I am potentially as guilty as anyone. And other people died as a result of it. Our government did work to keep that from happening. And in many places, they may have worked in overdrive. They may have done too much. They may have destroyed and made some lives difficult. That balance is what I think we should be looking for versus thinking, again, all or nothing. My way or their way. There is no in between. There is no we. That's awful. So a joy story for today is the fact that, for better or worse, the pharmaceuticals would have done their job because they're good at it. But who would be in position to afford what they did, to fund it, to make sure it got distributed, to get it to the people whose outcomes in life tend to be worse than others for a list of reasons, whether it be poverty, rural, minorities. There's 1,000 reasons outcomes are different, but they tend to be different. But to some degree, our government stepped up. Don't care if you're talking about the Trump administration or the Biden administration. To some degree, they both did. That's probably why I have less fear. There are people looking out for me that don't know me. And in a shared society with 300 plus million people, we have to be looking out for each other. So that's the first part of the joy story. I'm alive. And I'm not really concerned that that's going to change. If it does, it was my time. I'm a believer. I'll be okay. But if it doesn't, and my time isn't up, and the therapies I'm receiving are part of the reason, I'm thankful for the people who go to work every day to make Americans' lives better, not just their own life better. Part 1 of 2. Second joy story. Why am I doing this show with COVID? Why am I doing this show at all? I like politics. I like real conversations. I want to talk to people. Marlon, you haven't talked to anybody yet. Well, I never think I'm going to make it past 5-10 minutes. Again, before the show, I feel horrible. When I start the show, for some reason, I feel great. Maybe I should just go on that. But I think I'll hold off until Monday until we do that. Here's another reason to do the show, joy story. Technology is crazy. There are people who love it, hate it. There are people who want social media to go one way or another. They want people to put whatever they can think of there. They don't care about disinformation. There are people who want to have the disinformation blocked. I think most people forget that the social media is voluntary. You don't have to be there. You don't have to use it. If you don't like a particular product, go to another one. That's certainly my preliminary belief. I think disinformation hurts us. I think censoring has the potential to hurt us, but if we choose to use a product that has decided to censor, that is a choice. And I think people have the opportunity to make products that aren't censored at all. I think those are just also part of capitalism. I know we tend to pick and choose which parts we like and want and which things we support and which things we don't, but I don't want anybody to forget any of that. But I can tell you the use of technology has me sitting in a home office with a camera, I don't know, 2 feet from my face, broadcasting to anybody out there capable and willing to listen. So probably the greatest joy. I have 2 sons. I'm talking to them. I'm trying to talk about a world that I want to be better for them. They'll know what I think and what I believe about politics and the things that go on, but I want them to make their own decisions. I want them to think about things that are important to them. My wife and I have done a great job raising our children. My wife, from pure love, her education and her background helps her get insight on things with children that most people don't have. But love has probably been the most important element. Mine, I use sports. I use sports every way I could to teach the most important elements of life through sports. If you can get a kid to be successful in a sport, not because of their talent, but because of their discipline, their hard work, their commitment, their dedication, their ability to deal with adversity, their concept and understanding of team, and their willingness to work together, you'll have the makings of success no matter what you choose to do later in life. So you want a joy story from a program like this in a divided nation dealing with divisive issues? I get to spend 10, 20, 45, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours a day leaving messages for my sons. So whether you love them or hate them, know that there is a bigger purpose. One, wouldn't it be nice if the divided states of America were united? And 2, if you could leave messages forever for your family. Fortunately, I get an opportunity to do that, and I have to thank all of you for being willing to tolerate it. Appreciate you tuning into the Divided States of America show. That is the program for today. I'll give it another shot tomorrow. I know I should take a day of rest, but again, I'm pretty persistent. I'm going to keep going until I can't. Right now, I still can. I appreciate you all listening. Share. Tell your friends and family if there's any aspect of this that's enjoyable to you. Subscribe. Tune in. Do what you can to help get the word out to more people. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in.